Hello, selectors, and welcome to the LifeBurst podcast. Today, I have an incredibly special guest here. I've got Carl. Carl, hey.
Hey.
So, Carl, you took not first, but not second, but third place at the Wecross tournament, which you went 6-1, right?
That's right. Yeah, I lost round 6, but I won round 7.
Nice. Yeah, my loss was in like round 3, so I think that's probably why I ended up in 5th. But good job. What did you lose to? Just so I I know.
I lost to Hirana. It was a pretty close game, but I think I misplayed a bit, and I died from turn 4, which I was not expecting, to a surprise Nobunaga. But yeah, he played really well.
Was that Mario from
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just played him as Nova in one of our just like random things where we were doing to promote the selector circuit. Plug. If you guys want to join the selector circuit and play with us, you can. Yeah, he's like really good at Hirana though. So that's not a sad loss at all.
Yeah, he played perfectly to his outs, and yeah, also Citas are brutal. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been on the receiving end of those Citas lately. So, but anyways, Carl, you got third place, man. Top 4 in a national ceremony. That's really big.
Yeah, I'm really surprised. Yeah, I went into the ceremony thinking that I had a decent chance just because my record's been pretty good with Tamago. And also, I thought it might be really good in this meta in particular just because of Nova. I think Tamago's pretty good against Nova. So I definitely thought I might perform well, but I wasn't expecting third. I basically just wanted the playmat, and I'm happy I got the playmat. But getting third on top of that is really nice.
Yeah. How's the Arcwane feel?
The Arcwane is nice. The art is really amazing, and the playmat art also amazing.
Yeah, I'm thrilled that you got all that. And you can look at the Arcwane, and then you can see when people. I guess you can see the Lancelot and be like, "No, I don't play red. That's fine," and wave for it to go away.
Yeah.
Well, actually, your list opened your placement as well. Opened my eyes to the idea that Tamago is actually kind of a Nova killer, isn't it?
Yeah. I've played against 4 Novas so far. I've won every single one of them. Basically, the way that the matchup kind of ends up is they draw a guard every turn, and you make them discard the guard every turn. So it feels pretty bad for the Nova player.
Yeah. So far, I've been lucky enough to not necessarily go up against a Tamago Freeze deck. I've played against the other version of Tamago. When I was making my lists, I still didn't believe in the freeze, which is probably wrong of me. But I liked the Robin Hood-esque version that where you're just sort of forcing discard and vanishing on the field a little bit more. But
right.
I'm getting persuaded by watching some gameplay videos and your record that maybe the freeze version is better.
Yeah, I've tried both. I originally got the list from you. So I tried both of the lists that you put out in your earlier videos, the wall version and then the freeze version. I just conceptually liked the freeze version more. One issue I had with the wall version is just not having kind of enough lane clear.
Yeah.
So I would just die very slowly, but I didn't really have a way to push damage. And also I would try to kind of clear their board, hope that they can only field 2 things and try to attack, on open lane. But when I tried to do that against a card jockey, they would just refill their board every single turn. I couldn't push any damage with the wall version. I never actually tried playing a Robin Hood, partly because I didn't understand how it worked. But as soon as I switched back to freeze, it felt a lot better. Just more consistent with making sure to get the Great Reversal off, which I think is a great card.
Yeah. I mean, look, anything that says open up 2 lanes and it's one in a single card is pretty good in Wecross, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played a little bit of... I tried some freeze tech in Nova and decided I didn't like it. But again, they're 2 completely different decks. And one of the reasons was because of Great Reversal. I was just like, my clock was so slow with Nova. I was so concerned I was going to go to time literally every game that I just threw Great Reversal in there as my second piece with only running Fenrir. And it worked. It worked. Like you could do it. Like it wasn't a great idea, but you could do it. And so I know from playing Tamago in the past too that you could play Great Reversal with just Fenrir. So clearly, if you're running a full freeze package, it's a very good card.
Yeah, after the addition of Waffle Ice, I feel like it makes Great Reversal even better. Like you could still get Great Reversal off, fairly consistently with just the Fenrirs, but having the Waffle Ice just makes it. It also synergizes amazingly with Great Reversal. So adding the Waffle Ices, I think, has made the deck even better.
Certainly. So let's talk about the let's talk about pre deck list stuff. You would what brought you? You said you were a Tamago player prior to this. What
Right.
was the reason you decided to settle on bringing Tamago to the ceremony?
So I've pretty much only played Tamago ever since I started playing this game. I just
So I
like
got a
the
respect for
character.
you for that. Yeah.
I like the character. I like the idea of discarding the opponent's hand. That just sounded like fun to me. I wasn't used to that idea. So basically, I've just been playing Tamago nonstop, and I didn't even consider bringing any other character. Also, it's what have the most experience on because I pretty much exclusively play Tamago. Whenever I play something else, I basically just lose all the time, and I don't know why. But at least with Tamago, I kind of understand better what I'm doing.
Yeah. Experience is a significant portion of getting a top placement in a ceremony. Yeah. So you decided, all right, so Tamago was the way to go. You had enough experience in it and you tried out this freeze build. I guess you were noticing that it was probably pretty good against Nova, and then that kind of gave you your final push.
Yeah, so playing against Nova made me realize that the matchup seems like really favored for Tamago. So that gave me a lot of confidence going into the ceremony. And then basically this list I just got from your video about what to upgrade for for a stand-up diva, and I did decently well. So in terms of like preparation, I just made sure I got my cards on time so that I could play at a locals and test out the new kind of upgrade, and it seemed pretty good. So I just kept the list as is, and then went into the ceremony. And as I was playing the ceremony, I kind of got a better idea of how it should kind of flow, what I should look for turn 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it would be especially good in this meta. I always think Tamago is good, but especially now.
Look, I mean, the fact that you were able to top a ceremony with Tamago, repping Tamago, and using both the Tamagos as like art pieces is There's some,
Yeah.
there's some pimping on that front. But let me ask you a couple questions about the what you decided to go with. So Bang has a new center out, and that Bang Solo, and theoretically it could have been a good card. But why did you decide to go with DeCapo instead of Solo?
So I'm trying to remember, what does Bang Solo do again?
Solo is the one that stops Signy damage if it's in the center lane, and also gives Lancer.
Oh, yeah. So I don't really like the idea of Lancer in this deck just because I'm trying to usually Enter Starve.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think DeCapo is just really good for slowing down the game. It's like most likely you're probably going to play it turn 2 defense or turn 3 defense.
Mm-hmm.
Really stalls out the game because you just kind of need to survive till turn 3. I'm not really, the Lancer doesn't. I'm trying to give them as little enter as possible. Basically, if I'm going for an enter starve strat, which freeze is really good for, then I would try to give them as little as possible and not vanish anything unless I absolutely had to.
Yeah, I agree with you, Carl. Inevitably, there's always this sort of tug and pull relationship with discard and vanishing on the field, aka forcing them to play more cards out. And then freeze seems like it's the opposite. Like yes, discard's good in a freeze build, but you really don't want to vanish too much if you're going to pull that out.
I think freeze is kind of like another way to kind of attack their hand, because very often once you freeze it and it's downed, then they'll feel the pressure to kind of either enter it or trash it in order to keep the tempo up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
In a way, sometimes like the first freeze is just an enter for them, which is all right. But as soon as you get more freezes, they're very often going to trash that second one.
Yeah,
So
totally.
it's another way of kind of making them have to use their hand to play over these frozen Signy.
Totally. And so let's talk about the main deck a little bit. So I played quite a bit of Tamago Freeze in preparation for the first ceremony.
Right,
And I ended up not doing it. And the reason why was, like you said, I was just dying in slow motion a lot of the times. Like
right,
the freeze felt good. I could slow the game down. I could enter stars successfully, but I had no real way to just finish out the game. But there's been there's been a lot of upgrades to freeze in Civ
right.
3. And so let's talk about some of those upgrades.
hmm
You've got the one that I'm most interested in is, and I just have limited test in it, is how is Primoria?
So Primora, well, partly because I played against so much Nova and also Hirana that has the bounce from Akino Rock.
Yeah.
Primora didn't actually feel that impactful.
Hmm.
So, like in theory, Primora should be really good because she freezes at the end of their turn, freezes when vanished.
Yeah.
In a way, it probably still was good for me, just because it
Hmm.
kind of forced the opponent to have these answers and actually use them. But it definitely there's ways that the opponent can play around Primora, but it kind of forces them to do it because otherwise you'll start getting all this freeze value if you leave it unanswered. So I do think it's a pretty good card. The only thing that worries me about running Primora now is things like Sita and Volcanic, because if they
Yeah.
get vanished by the life burst, you basically get no value from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it forces them to kind of deal with the Primoras either with the life burst or their assist rig or like a spell. If it can't really be vanished by things like if you play like Nobunaga or other things that are on enter kind of vanish,
Hmm.
then Primora can just instantly freeze and down whatever just vanished it. So
Got
it's
it.
definitely a very annoying card for the opponent
Yeah.
to deal with. But there are
And
there
and
are kind of answers.
and annoying is sometimes good enough in a stall strategy, right? Like you're
Right.
like, I just needed to help me get bridge the gap between turn 2 and turn 4, you know?
Right.
Okay, so then I also want to talk about Akufuku. We're only
Right.
running 2 in this list. I'm assuming it's basically it played out just the same as a folklore, but also green because the deck needs 6 pips of green.
Right. I don't know if I've actually really like run folklore that much, so that's something that I would consider throwing back in really. But I think most of the freeze lists that I've been running before didn't actually run folklore. So, but yeah, Akafuku is kind of was probably one of the more disappointing cards, just because
Hmm.
every time it kind of I life bursted it, the Signies were all already done attacking. So it was
Yeah,
every single time it life bursted, maybe like 2 or 3 times, it was just an enter charge one, which is not really which isn't really good enough. I kind of want more kind of like down and freeze and draw or things like that.
yeah, that makes sense. There's definitely wide options of level 2s that can do that. Um,
Yeah, but it is a
and
green. But and there are only 5 greens in this deck. But I found that pretty much every game I had a green and enter, turn
yeah,
2 defense or turn 3 defense. So I never had an issue doing bang de capo.
yeah, and it is worth mentioning. In order for Gabang de Capo to be a good card, you do need some amount of green.
Yeah, so
so
I
so
see why it does help a bit, but it's probably one of the first things I would consider cutting.
yeah, there's definitely other choices. I mean, for example, Kayasumi could theoretically do the same thing. I've heard a lot of people say that in the second ceremony they have not enjoyed the folklore-esque effects as much as they did in when No
Right.
Limit was king.
Yeah, because you're kind of relying on it being like if they cleared your whole field and then triggered that first, then it's really
Hmm.
good.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that's not always the case. Oftentimes it's the last Signy attacking or it's just the Larig attacking, and then you don't get nearly as much value.
Yeah, and then that brings us to our final one, which is Waffle Ice. So
Right.
talk about it.
Waffle Ice is amazing. Uh, just having more kind of enter effects is really good. Freezing 2 on enter is really good.
Mhm.
And then I found that it was actually also really good against Nova, or just kind of against slower decks, because people really are scared of Waffle Ice just kind of running wild and drawing you cards every turn. So they would play their answers just for Waffle Ice. And also, Waffle Ice really helps with enabling Great Reversal and getting you value right away, because you play Great Reversal and then you send them to trash, you put 2 cards under Waffle Ice, and then you enter attack and you draw a card. And now there's still 1 more card under Waffle Ice, so if they don't answer it before they start their next attack phase, then you get to draw another card. So I've drawn guards, I've drawn random drains from Waffle Ice, and it's been really good.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense. When I was doing my set review, one of the things I said about Waffle Ice was if 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 Signy don't give you immediate value, then they should be immediately considered under suspect. But you're saying that because the combo between Waffle Ice and Great Reversal is so innately good, synergistic together, that it pushes the card's power level higher than it would normally be.
Yeah, maybe about half the time I would play Great Reversal, I would combo it with Waffle Ice. And yeah, just having that additional card draw to potentially draw into guards and survive extra turns is really good.
Yeah. I can feel you on that, and I will also echo that with Nova, it actually is really annoying. Freeze 2 is really annoying because you want to Komai, right? And just freezing down 2 means that person, if they decide not to go and discard these cards, basically,
Right.
then they're not going to Komai, right? Like that's bad. For the Nova deck. So I found that Fenrir in the mirror was annoying, let alone if you're running, 6 copies of now Fenrir or whatever for the Freeze 2, 7 if you're going up to it it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah. I didn't actually get to take advantage of freezing something that was already down by Kome, but yeah, in theory that would be really good as well, because if you didn't have an answer for the Kome, very often I would just play Nova Slash on Kome, and then I would just put so much discard pressure on them, or maybe use like a Chandelier to get rid of it. Basically, I didn't actually get to like take advantage of the fact that Kome downs, and then cards like Waffle Ice can keep them downed.
Yeah.
In theory, that would also be really good.
And I'm gonna be honest with you, it's one of my favorite combos to do. How did playing Chandelier and also playing Royal Blue feel? It feels very taxy.
So Chandelier, I feel like is really good in control matchups against Nova. It's really hard to answer the Chandelier, and it doesn't feel good to have this 1300 just constantly clearing a lane and you're not getting enter from it. And yeah, same with like the spinning harmony is just kind of there to kind of activate the Chandelier. But I found that Chandelier was not really good in the aggressive matchups. I would very often just kind of enter it away.
Totally, makes sense.
Just because I needed to kind of keep up damage. So in those cases, I preferred playing Royal Blue.
Yeah.
And also very often I would, maybe like 2 or 3 times during the ceremony, I flipped a Chandelier as my first life cloth and had nothing to kind of salvage. That always felt bad.
Yeah, totally.
But Royal Blue, when I was during the ceremony, it didn't feel amazing. But in theory, it is really good. Just you force them to either take the damage from the open lane, or they have to spend 2 enter. So those are both really good for this deck. And the best part about Royal Blue is that it's free. So oftentimes I was playing Royal Blue and I was disappointed that it wasn't like a guaranteed kind of lane clear.
Yeah.
But by forcing them to spend that 2 additional enter just to keep it on the board, that really limits the plays they can do next turn. So it helps to increase the chances of your survival going into the following turn. So I think the Royal Blues are actually really good, mainly because they're free. And if they stay alive, you could potentially use its effect again. So it also is a threat, similar to all the other level 3s. All the level 3s are kind of threats. So, and also it's got a really good life burst. Freezing a Lurig feels really good.
Yeah, so let me ask you, how many times did you hit that in the ceremony?
I think maybe just once, but it was pretty good.
It felt like cheating when you hit it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very fair. I would consider running 4 Royal Blues just for the life burst.
I agree. It's a good card. So yeah, let's talk about your ceremony experience. How much Like, what did you play against? How many card jockeys did you play against?
I played
Et
against
cetera, et cetera.
one card jockey. That game was actually surprisingly close. Um, I played against 3 Novas, and I think the first game I didn't really know what I was doing. I wasn't going discard heavy enough, and they were guarding all of my attacks because they had 2 cards in hand, and I would make them discard the not guard.
Yeah.
But after that, I kind of got a better hang of the Nova matchups and started making life difficult for Nova players, basically. I think I played against one Sangha, and then I played against one Musica, and I played against one Hirana.
Hmm.
Yeah, the Sangha matchup, I had no idea how I should play it, because I kind of have to decide early on if I want to enter starve or if I want to just fully vanish, kind of like how I do in the Nova matchup.
Hmm.
But in every other matchup, it's probably better to enter starve. In the Sangha matchup, I was vanishing everything. He had quite kind of late game kind of deck, so it might have actually been the right move. And yeah, that game was pretty close. He was a really good player. And then the Hirana matchup, I kind of talked about it a bit earlier, but that was pretty close. It was a very fast game. He was taking damage really heavily in the beginning,
Hmm.
and then he played 2 Nobunaga. He hit 2 Sitas, and that felt really bad for me.
Yeah.
And then he played 2 Nobunagas, but the first Nobunaga didn't have double crush, but the second one did. And I'd already used up all my Assistler rigs, so I couldn't stop that second one. And basically, kind of sniped me. I was at like 2 life cloth, but then suddenly surprise Sita to lane clear into a surprise Nobunaga to
Yeah.
double life crush, and then swing with the Larig when I don't have a guard. It was really close.
Mario knows how to play this out. So if there's
Yeah,
anything I've learned by
100%.
playing him twice on webcam, that guy can hit the Nobunaga or hit the lane clear and then be like, okay, the way I win this is I draw the Nobunaga, I do a little bit of digging, got the Nobunaga, okay, cool. Like he's like identified his like method of killing you.
Right, it's very scary.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, and then the last game. Well, all of these games, I would say, I would maybe feel slightly behind until I played Great Reversal, and then I would feel ahead. The very last game, though, I was getting absolutely stomped by a really good Musica player, and I was trying to vanish his Signy just because I don't really play against Musica often. I think it's kind of the scariest matchup because I'm least familiar with it, and they seem very capable at kind of keeping hand with like Xeno clusters and the Madoka assist rigs, and bouncing it back, bouncing the Madoka assist rig back to their hand so they could be very high on hand.
It's true. As a discard deck, you're looking at if I discard them 3 cards, that's great, but then they also might just double down on the drawing 2 effect from the Madoka, and then having also 3 from the Xeno. That puts them at. Plus, they technically draw a card when they Musica to level 3 when they salvage from their trash.
Yeah, I think he even played Salvage the Future to draw 3 cards, to salvage 3 cards basically. And I was like, wow, this guy's beginning every single turn or every turn of mine with only like 1 card in hand. So when I play Hanpanai, I'm not getting great value. But every time he begins his main phase, he's suddenly drawing all these cards and he can actually play cards. And I'm like, my whole strategy revolves around making you discard your guards so I can have my Larig attacks stick, but that's not working at all. I'm getting crushed. And then the only reason I won was because he hit a life burst where it let him play the Ereshkigal onto the field, crushing 2 of his own life cloth, and then he cleared my entire field. I was pretty shook by that. I didn't realize that card existed. But because of the way the game had gone, I still had my Nova Dirty. So I played, or not Nova Dirty, sorry, Nova Slash. So I played my Nova Slash to stop 1, and then I flipped a Neon Tetra, and that stopped the other Signy, and then I played a guard. And then he had 6 cards in hand, and I still had Hanpanai. So I played Hanpanai, I made him discard all 6 cards. He had 4 landlings in his hand. and and then I barely closed it out just by having another guard and him not top decking well.
Man, it's
I should have lost that game, but
well, it's the name of
I'll take it.
Look, man, it's the name of the podcast, the Life Burst podcast. So you win or die by
Yeah.
some of those life bursts, man. And it's true, you really do. Like, and the truth is, you play more. I've learned this over the course of my 1 year of playing Wixoss. You play more defensive life bursts because they enable you to win games that you won't normally win, with maybe the
Right.
exception of being no limit, right? Or an aggro deck that would prefer to just lane clear, so that way they can win, right?
Right.
So you play those life bursts for those moments. Like, it's even though I know you're saying like I shouldn't have won that game. The fact of the matter is you had those life bursts in the deck, so they were your outs.
It made me realize that I need more of those kind of life bursts. It makes me want to almost like cut out chandeliers and add more defensive life bursts that actually affect the board, just so I can have a better matchup against all these aggressive decks.
You know what? That's a really great transition to what you would consider changing in this deck, or what you already have changed for your locals.
Right. One thing that I noticed, the main two things that I noticed after the ceremony was that I think I need more defensive life bursts. So things that down, freeze, and draw, or like Neon Tetra or Cositas, or even just more Waffle Ices. Things like those life bursts are really good. And then, I think the deck just can die to like really aggressive decks if you kind of get unlucky and don't trigger these defensive life bursts. So I think it's really important to have these defensive life bursts. And then another thing I noticed was that I think the deck needs more level 2s. There's so many times where I wish I had a level 2, but I only had a level 1. So like going into turn 3, usually my limit is 7. So I would either play a level 3 and then 2 level 2s, or maybe I would play 2 level 3s and 1 level 1. But then as soon as I use my second assist rig, I want a level 2 every single turn.
Yeah.
So I want 2 level 2s on turn 2. Sometimes I want 2 of them on turn 3, and then I want 1 on turn 4 and after. So, but there's only 6 in this deck right now. I think it definitely needs more level 2s.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And also, you don't need that many level 1s because of Nova Dirty. Nova Dirty is really good for kind of sculpting out your hand early. So I think you could get away with running maybe a little less level 1s and add more level 2s.
Yeah, I could see on that.
Yeah. Things that I would cut. I would probably cut Akufuku. And I would probably run multicolors. I think the level 1 multicolor is pretty good. I also think the level 2, or like the white-green multicolors. So I think the level 1's pretty good, Triumph, and also Babel. I think Babel is actually pretty good. So those are kind of just consistency options, consistency kind of wall options to help make sure you can grab them off Nova Dirty and have them in your enter for Bang de Capo. So I place a lot of value on those.
It's still weirdly relevant. Like we seem to have gone away from level 2 multicolors, but they're still weirdly relevant in the fact that just look, 10k is a stat line that you still need to just wall up against aggro. It stops most decks that aren't named No Limit and that are running specifically their Deafening Inferno, because all the other decks that are running Deafening Inferno, it's only an 8,000, or the Eternal Influence now is also 8,000.
Yeah. 8,000 is, as I'm kind of finding out, it might not be good enough just because of things that can target specifically 8,000. Those are very scary. So it makes me a little hesitant to even use Primora, but Primora is probably pretty good. Need to test it a little more, because in the ceremony it didn't perform amazingly, but they had answers basically. But yeah, I would even consider maybe just adding back in Folklores. Downing is nice. The only problem is they don't freeze, but at least they do down and draw.
Totally.
Yeah. And then I would consider, I would probably cut the Snow Muse. I think the Snow Muse are kind of situational. They're kind of hard to really get value off of. and there's a little bit of kind of anti-synergy with the way the deck works, because in aggressive matchups, you don't really want to play I think it has only 2,000 power. You don't really want to have that stick on the field.
That is true. Yeah, that is quite weak.
But it has to stick on the field in order to bottom deck something. But usually you don't have to bottom deck it just because they're probably going to trash it on their own turn anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So it felt very situational. And sometimes they don't have a Signy in the middle because you played Nova Slash to clear their middle, or they have a Zhao Yun in the middle and you can't target it. And it also needs a previous freeze in order to have the 2 or more frozen in order to activate its effect. So it's very difficult to get Snow Mew off. And in a control matchup, I'm not that likely to play it either, just because I'm probably trying to vanish their Signy. But if they're vanished, then they're not sitting on the field frozen. So I can't take advantage of its effect there either. So I would probably change that card out as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I would also rarely ever play the Neon Tetras from hand, although they are very good in the life burst. So I would consider keeping it or just running it just for the life burst. I think I would also cut the Spinning Harmonies. Similar to the Snow Mews, they're very situational.
Mm-hmm.
I basically just use them to kind of activate the Chandelier. I would enter them and then pay them out to trash just to make sure Chandelier would be active. But as I'm finding out in aggressive matchups, Chandelier's a little too slow. So I would consider cutting down the number of Chandeliers, or maybe even just cutting Chandelier, and then for sure cutting the Spinning Harmony. It was very difficult to get the full effect from Spinning Harmony because of things like Nova Slash, where it clears a lane. So now they only have 2.
Right.
2 Signy on the field, so you can't really get the effect of the third one.
Totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
otherwise,
it is
the core. I feel like the core of the deck is really strong.
Let's talk about that. What do you think the core of the deck is? Like, what are the cards that you're like, these are irreplaceable, and if I could, I would run these numbers of them?
Yeah, Fenrir is amazing. Discarding is the whole deck strategy, and then freezing also puts pressure on their hand as well. So Fenrir is amazing. It's a threat, so they usually would like to clear it as well, unless they've completely resigned themselves to not having a hand for the rest of the game, which is pretty good for you. Pretty good for the Tamago player. Yeah, I'm thinking that Royal Blue is actually really good. Just because it's free. Like, after the ceremony, I started experimenting with things like Blue Wailing, which should be pretty good because it trashes things, so it denies enter. It's just expensive. It costs 2 enter and 2 hand, and you don't always have that. You're kind of a little tight on enter just to play your Assist Rigs and Great Reversal, especially. So, like, in theory, Blue Wailing should be pretty good. I just think it's probably too expensive. And then Waffle Ices, very good. I would consider running more Waffle Ices.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that the core of the deck really lies in its late game level 3s, right? And you just need a better way to to freeze or stall out with your level 1s and level 2s. And that can be as simple as vanilla multicolors if you needed to, if it worked.
Yeah, I think the multicolors are pretty good. You kind of, I don't know that there's much you can do level 1 and 2 really, other than try to like wall up, like use Zhao Yun as like a mini wall, absorb some attacks, or even, I guess if you're going first, you could put down the 5,000 power level 1s as well, knowing they won't get Lancelotted that turn. But I think the level 2 10k walls are pretty good. So yeah, basically just walling up. Primora should be pretty good. I don't know. Gotta test that out more. And then the random drains, amazing in life burst. Also good to play once you hit level 3, I feel like. And just holding on to them late game especially, to really make sure that every time you swing, they have 0 hand.
Gotcha. So let's do a quick recap. You talked to that a little bit about it with basically what you were trying to do, but let's go and just talk about your game plan, your game flow, if you will.
Right.
When you're at mulligan stages, what are you really looking at in an ideal opening hand?
Yeah, so usually I would just look for Zhao Yun, but I think the multicolors are pretty good too.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think you would also want to look for Primoras as well, just because they're pretty good on turn two. You start threatening them on turn two, basically. Um, yeah, for the most part, I would say look for Zhao Yun and multicolors, although you can also find them from Nova Dirty. So you can afford to be pretty aggressive with your mulligan.
Mhm.
Yeah, just try to get all the life burst cards back into the deck. Try to stack it a bit. Um, and then, yeah, play the level ones on, Zhao Yun and multicolors on turn one. Turn two, ideally, with this deck, probably look for 2 Primoras and a Zhao Yun. That would be ideal to make sure the Zhao Yun doesn't get hit by or whatever level one you have, doesn't get hit by the Lancelot. And then double Primora is better than one, just because they can't. It's going to be harder for them to deal with two of them.
Yep.
So they might have the answer for one, but it's going to be hard to have the answer for both of them. Yeah, and then turn three, very often just Fenrir. Fenrir is really good on turn three when they still have a hand. Sometimes they've run out of a hand turn four and after, in which case Fenrir is just kind of there for the freeze. But even just playing a royal blue that same turn on turn three with the Fenrir is pretty good. Just kind of pushing in extra damage. Either that or playing just more level twos. The Fenrir plus more level twos.
Gotcha.
And then, yeah, that's another reason why Waffle Ice is pretty good. Sometimes you don't need the discard, but you still want the freeze. So you play Waffle Ice, and now you're potentially getting card advantage.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And while you're playing your turn one, turn two defense, you're trying to enter starve, right? That's your goal. So you're not necessarily vanishing all that much.
Right. Pretty much any kind of aggressive deck, I'm going to be enter starving. So yeah, I'm going to try to wall up against their units. Try to make it really awkward for them. In terms of, they would have to kind of trash their own units if they wanted to put on additional or enter their units and potentially trash if they wanted to really keep the pressure up.
Yep.
And then, yeah, especially if you say you hit a freeze from your life burst, you want to try to make it awkward for them, maybe like freeze and off color to make it even trickier for them to kind of grow and just kind of use any of their effects in general, like playing their assist rigs or using any enter effects. That's why sometimes I'm not even that afraid of Lancelot, just because it costs an enter and they're playing it so early, they might be screwing themselves over because I'm really trying my best to deny enter. So they'll be very starved. They're gaining one enter a turn basically. And
I hear you.
yeah, and then post Great Reversal, you've trashed their units. They don't even have things to enter from their field. So now they draw 2 cards. They don't have enter. It's pretty crippling.
So when do you think you're playing Great Reversal on average? Probably around turn 4.
Yeah, usually it's the turn. Yeah, usually turn 4, just because turn 3 is usually Hanpanai, and then turn 4, basically as soon as I hit 5 enter, and I've already played my assist rigs, I'm probably playing Great Reversal, just because, maybe you had some additional draw on turn 4, and you were able to get back some of your hand, so you've played some good units,
Certainly.
and then I deal with them on turn 4 with the Great Reversal. And that denies the enter, it clears the field, it pushes damage for me, and yeah, I usually don't try to save it that long, just because I do want to kind of get some kind of value from the fact that I'm trashing their field, rather than so they're not going to enter. And then the only downside to that is if you don't kill them on the turn with Great Reversal, you've done the direct damage to them, and they've flipped some life bursts. So they might get value from that, and they'll have some enter after you attack their life cloth. So yeah, sometimes I would probably still do it, even if they wouldn't die from it.
Got it. So let me just try to see if I can get this straight. Are you saying that after you basically turn on Great Reversal, you're like, all right, engines on, foot on the gas, let's go ahead and start vanishing now and stuff, because this is where we need to start ending the game?
Um, I'm actually still enter starving throughout the entire game. Uh, yeah, I just don't want to give them any possible outs with the enter that they could potentially get. So yeah, I'm still yeah. Basically, the main win condition is just you keep swinging with your Lyrig and making them discard their hand. So you're pushing consistent damage. Let's say past turn 3 with your Lyrig, so you will actually kill them surprisingly quick.
Got
And
it.
then the great reversal is just kind of this extra damage that really pushes you over the top. So I'm actually still enter starving throughout the entire game. Um, yeah, and I found that that's been working for me. Um, yeah, I'm just kind of afraid to give them enter. So so yeah, I'm just playing kind of the same game, turn 4, 5, 6 onward.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is Great Reversal is less of a win condition and more of it's basically just more enter denial,
In a
resource
way, yeah.
denial, and your main win condition in this deck is your Elric.
Yeah. The discarding making them discard a card every turn is really good.
Yeah, plus the Elric damage just being almost like uncounterable damage once a turn.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, I hear you on that front. So, I'm actually pretty excited to sleeve up some new versions of Tamago after talking to you about this.
Yeah, I think
I
it's really good.
yeah, I also think you got it spot on, man. It does seem like it's a Nova killer, right?
Yeah.
You played 3 Novas in your tournament and defeated every single one of them.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
and I played against at my local as well, and that's kind of when I realized that it was really good against Nova.
yeah. So and honestly, we are entering a part of the we're entering this weird moment in Wixoss where there's like clearly a control deck, and that control deck is Nova, and there's
Hmm.
clearly an aggro deck, and that deck is No Limit and Card Jockey. We really like Card Jockey for some reason in the United States, and so it does make sense now that there would be meta counters to these decks, and I do think Tamago can counter No Limit, right? Sans flipping some life bursts with some aggressive Cetas, for example. The deck
Yeah.
does a pretty good job walling up and enter denying and letting like No Limit burn its hand out.
Yeah. That's why I was kind of surprised by that game I played against Mario, round 6. I thought he would be completely out of gas, but the surprise Nobunaga was really good. Because usually when I play against Hirana, or I guess No Limit, they run out of gas very quickly, and then they'll die pretty quickly soon after. So I never felt like the matchup was that bad for Tamago. I would usually win it against Hirana. So yeah, I feel like Tamago is pretty good against aggressive decks too. And
Hmm.
yeah, even against control decks, it seems pretty good as well. I'm most afraid of Musica just because of they're able to kind of deny my strat of discarding their hand.
Yeah, those sort of mid range esque decks that are playing a little bit more towards the late game, but still have some amount of clock, so they're not necessarily playing into your hands of going completely late game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, Carl, man, that was a pretty concise and overall very good explanation of what you were looking to do in a freeze deck. It's rare to see a freeze deck, which seems strange because it's a pretty good strat nowadays, at
Yeah.
least well supported, but it felt very missing from set 1 and set 2. So I'm glad to see it in set 3, and thank you for giving our viewers a chance to really know how they should be a guide really to how they should be playing these freeze strats specifically with Tamago. I do think Tamago aligns itself a little better towards freeze,
Right.
and I think if we're gonna go real far into the future of Wecross, literally the next set has a new Tamago that is a much better freeze Tamago
Oh,
that's gonna
really?
exist.
I'm
Yeah, yeah,
excited
yeah,
for that.
yeah. It's literally like, hey, when you make your opponents discard freeze things on their field, and it's like, oh, I like to do both of those things. So
Sounds good.
it's like no muss, no fuss. Yeah, I'm actually really excited for it because the freeze is in your Elrig, and that's in your Elrig deck. It means that you're going to have consistent freezes of your choice, no
Right.
matter what. And that means that you can put more less actual freeze and more freeze support in your main deck. And it feels like that's something that is going to take the freeze strat to its like next level in set 4.
Yeah, I feel like freeze and Tamago go extremely well together. I feel like discarding and freezing go really well together as well. Yeah, and I feel like freeze is kind of slept on. It's very strong to deny your opponent's enter.
Surprisingly strong against the Nova Mirror too. Every time my opponent's freezing my field, I'm like, oh, this actually really sucks for me.
Yeah, I haven't tried just fully freezing and leaving it, but I'll try that next time.
Yeah, it's a good one. Trust me. Or at least don't do it. If it's against me, feel free to not do that. Anyways, dude, it was great talking with you. I think we learned a lot from this. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, nothing in particular. Play Tamago. She's pretty fun.
It's true. I recently got the top 16 Tamago Uchu mat from the first ceremony. One of my friends gave it to me. It is nice. It is nice to fully stand the Uchu field.
I wish I played in the first ceremony, so that I would have a chance to get that. Would perfectly fit, my deck.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be more playmats in the future. Don't you worry. And I'm sure you'll get there. You've got number 3 under your belt, so aim for first place, right? Next, that's the next logical step.
I guess so. Yeah. I'll try my best.
I bet you can do it, and I'll be here cheering you on, buddy. Anyways, so let's go ahead and sign off. As tradition stands, would you like to do the sign off?
Yep. Hope you guys have fun playing Wixoss. I have a lot of fun playing Wixoss, and may you guys always flip a life burst.
You did it! There we go! Woohoo! All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.